I think we have the basics in this regard, so we should switch to acquire more knowledge of local circumstances. And interestingly, the Roman Catholic Church may have a special institute for this, Bishops' Conference, but our next speaker is going to address this issue. Professor UJHÁZI is the director of Institute for Religion and Society at the Ludovika University of Public Service and the head of Institute for Integrity of Creation and the leader of the From Just War to Philosophy of Peace research group at Pázmány Péter Catholic University. A Roman Catholic priest with 3 PhDs, 1 in canon law, 1 in military science, and 1 in Catholic theology, with all the expertise to investigate the question of Bishops' Conference role in Catholic understanding of the protection of creation. Professor, please.
Your Eminency, dear colleagues, dear guests. Now, I'm going to speak about the local circumstances because we are talking a lot about the statements of the Holy See and the popes, but now I would like to concentrate on the local bishop conferences, one of the most important institutions of the Catholic Church. Subsequent the dissolution of Papal State, Leo XIII declared the promotion of global peace as the Holy See international mission. I know that is a trendy to reflect Leo XIII in our days from the question of the labor, but now I'm going to speak about his international goals. His successors continued this approach, acknowledging the complex nature of challenges to peace and evolving the security environment, recognizing the dangers beyond the armed conflicts. They recognized that there were challenges to peace other than armed conflict, including environmental issues. Pope Francis has also acknowledged this complex nature. In his exhortation Evangelii Gaudium, he clarified that the peace is not simply the absence of warfare. Based on precarious balance of power, it links peace to social harmony, the land, the defense of life, human and civil rights. And all of this is closely linked to the environmental issues. The challenges also exhibit regional diversity. Consequently, however, the Church can leverage the principle of subsidiarity and the capacities of the local churches. Prominent local institutions are the Bishops' Conference, a permanent group of bishops of some nation or a certain territory according to the canon law. My presentation examines the potential of Conference of Bishops to contribute to the promotion of peace, particularly in environmental issues. I hypothesize that such institutions are key regional forums for promoting peace and protection of the creation. This can be justified from their history, first, from their historical character, second, from their theological character, and finally, third, from the legal principles, canonical principles. The most important is that the conference is a mid-level synthesizer. In contrast to individual statements of local bishops, the power of the common action and the more comprehensive regional knowledge against the instruments of the Holy See make it possible to act more effectively if we compare the Conference of Bishops with the statement of the local bishops or the statement of the Holy See. This effectiveness even depends on the commitment and qualification of each bishop and the country's social and political structure. We will see certain examples when the capacity of the local bishop conference was very limited due to the local circumstances. First, let me tell you some words about the historical perspective. Prior to the Second Vatican Council, bishops had taken joint action in several regions. They primarily did so through local and regional synods. One example is the initiative Treuga Dei, Peace of God. This initiative limited the use of force in space and time. However, they proved inadequate for addressing social issues in the 18th century. Consequently, in the 19th century, they were convened less frequently and in some regions not at all. However, there was a growing need for the Church to address and evaluate social questions, social issues at local level. Conferences, the Conference of Bishops, Episcopal conferences, which were largely established for the protection of ecclesiastical interest, proved to be more effective in this regard. Giorgio Feliciani devoted a monograph to the development of conferences. By the way, he is Dr. Honorabilis of the Pázmány Péter Catholic University. He points out that even before the legislation was enacted, conferences of bishops across Europe had become forums for defending ecclesiastical interest and promoting social and security issues in very, very broad sense. They allowed Catholic bishops to take coordinated action against state authorities, anti-ecclesiastical organizations concerning Catholic schools, ecclesiastical universities, social issues, Catholic press, association, and so on, and so on, and so on. However, the meetings of bishops typically adopted a defensive attitude. This defensive attitude was true not only in the sense of the episcopal conferences, but it was true in the sense of the whole Catholic Church before the Second Vatican Council. According to other canonist Arturo Cattaneo, the strengthening of conferences of bishops cannot be explained only by pragmatic considerations alone. Social encyclicals from the 18th century encouraged local churches to get involved as much as possible in addressing social problems. It was impossible, sorry for saying that, to do this only from the headquarters in Rome and through encyclicals alone. This is very true even in our days, even in days taking into consideration the local problems, the local challenges, the local issues. Later, the social encyclicals made it crystal clear that the social issues should be addressed preferably at local level. This is the principle of subsidiarity. Using the full capacity of the local Catholic Church, this is the principle of synodality. Taking into account the Catholic teaching, this is the principle of hierarchy. This complex approach to the social issues presupposes more organized cooperation between local bishops. Benedict XV, Pius XI, Pius XII stood up for peace. During the two wars and the subsequent period, it became apparent that the joint action of local bishops was limited not only by under regulation from the side of the canon law, but also by the dictatorship itself. Mark Edward Roof points out about the Nazi Germany that only individual bishops took action against the dictatorship, but not the conference as a whole. Now, we don't have time to analyze other situations coming from the United States due to the slavery and the Central European countries, but this was very true, both of them, taking into consideration the limitation of the bishop conferences in this sense. After the Second Vatican Council developed a lot the concept of bishop conferences, by World War II, bishop conferences had become widespread institutions, but first were under-regulated or dogmatically undeveloped in the universal canon law. They had documents, sometimes permanent secretariat, and various working commissions. However, they lacked a legal framework and a theological elaboration of bishop cooperation. By the time of the council, it had already been determined that the local bishops could more successfully address regional issues if they cooperate. However, it was necessary to specify which pastoral, theological, and social issues cooperation should cover. This is true even nowadays, if we see the challenges coming from the environmental problems and environmental issues. Decree Christus Dominus established conferences of bishops as a permanent and binding institution of the Catholic Church. The decree is a framework document and does not deal with the detailed rules. Therefore, the conciliar documents that reflect the relationship between bishops are also significant due to the framework. We don't have opportunity and time to analyze the conciliar documents, including the Lumen Gentium Christus Dominus. However, they analyzed profoundly the relationship between the bishops and the Roman pontiff and the bishop, among the bishops themselves. In addition to the horizontal relationship between bishops, both the Council, Lumen Gentium 22, and the statements from the Holy See emphasize the hierarchical aspect. In promoting peace, the primacy of the Roman Pope, cannot be ignored. Juan Ignacio Arrieta, other canonist, canon lawyer, points out that the hierarchical approach which provides a framework for the joint and individual activity. Popes have often made statements about peace and security challenges. A prime example is the Pope's message on the World Day of Peace. Conferences are always required to support the work of Supreme Pastor, which is illustrated by the Pope's ideas, including the environmental questions, environmental issues, are echoed at the local conferences. The Code of Canon Law establishes a legal framework from which we can draw indirect conclusions about peace. Matters of conferences, such as action, operation, and conference arrangements, the plenary meeting, both ordinary and extraordinary, the permanent council, commissions, and institutions may be related to peace. The legislator seeks to dissolve the framework nature of the code, partly by the documents and partly by legislation outside the code. In addition, the conferences prevent the current canon law. The code mentions the institute in almost every central area of law which directly or indirectly related to promotion of social justice and peace. Of course, now we don't have time to analyze all of the questions mentioned in the Code of Canon Law. Just let me mention some of them. National associations, particular council, Catholic education, ecclesiastical universities, and so on. In all of these questions, the Conference of Bishops, they have competence, the regulation, published documents, and to harmonize the activity with the Holy See. Several papal and Holy See documents have addressed bishop conferences, either exclusively and partly. These documents have different levels of binding force and discuss peace to varying degrees. The legal and theological nature of conferences was examined in John Paul II's Motu Proprio Apostolos Suos. This law gave conferences the competence to defend peace and human rights and to promote cooperation with civil authorities on social justice. It is not the task of the Motu Proprio to specify what is meant by protecting peace and human rights. It may include many initiatives that are consistent with the Church intentions, including environmental matters. Relationship between conferences and peace is mostly confirmed in non-legislative papal and Holy See documents, mostly in the post-synodal exhortation of popes. Documents dealing with regions in which peace is precarious due to the security challenges always refer to the conferences in promoting peace, whether in Africa, in the Middle East, South America, or Asia. These documents also refer to the role of conferences. These geographical areas are also important because they often became victims of colonial powers, which specifically targeted the exploitation of natural resources. Under Pope Francis, the collaboration between local conferences of bishops and the Holy See has reached a new level in promoting peace. Already in his exhortation, Evangelii Gaudium, he emphasized the conferences of bishops are in position to contribute in many and fruitful ways to concrete realization of the collegiate spirit. This role of the conference was later confirmed in various documents. Pope Francis has drawn much from local conferences of bishops to gain a deeper understanding of specific security issues. Protecting the creation, one of the most significant security challenges, has generated a dialogue. In the encyclical Laudato Si, the Pope incorporated the work of conferences of bishops from all over the world to unprecedented extent. The whole globe appears, including South Africa, Asia, South America, North America, Europe, and Oceania. The encyclical has also had a profound impact on local church organizations. Several creation protection institutes have been established under the auspices of conferences of bishops. The encyclical Fratelli Tutti advocates for security, the protection of creation, social justice, and the good governance, media and solidarity, true justice behind peace treaties, wealth redistribution and peace, dialogue and reconciliation, the cause of the poor, the risk of the manipulation, respect for ethnic, confessional, national, or political diversity, quotes the message of the various conferences of bishops of the world. Using the documents of the conferences, shows that the Pope took seriously the relationship with particular churches in the light of the synodality or subsidiarity. Conferences of bishops have responded to local environmental issues and ecological questions. This is also true. I would like to reflect one of the statement, Antonio Spadaro, but I know we will have another presentation about the concept and philosophy of Antonio Spadaro. According to the author, Fratelli Tutti proclaimed dialogue between religions and the nations to promote world peace. This is also true of the church inner life, as evidenced by the incorporation of various bishop conferences. And finally, I would like to say some words about the institutional possibilities of the conferences of the bishops, how they can promote the peace, including the environmental issues. The motu proprio Apostolos Suos asks conferences of bishops to promote peace and social justice. However, this can be achieved through the various organs in different ways. The conference is a compulsory institution in each country or region that provides an opportunity to exchange information and joint action. The plenary meeting is the supreme decision-making body of the conference and is a mandatory element of its functioning. The plenary meeting does not express its views on security challenges in legislation. Instead, these are moral statements. Gerard Powers points out that most of the ethical statements by the United States Conference of Bishops have been related to regional wars, security issues, weapon systems, and environmental questions. The analyses are usually developed more thoroughly by the individual commissions of the conference. However, since the main body of the conference is the plenary meeting, its statements carry particular weight, even if they are more general than the special materials. The executive body of the conference is the Permanent Council, which usually consists of the President, Vice President, and other members of the conference. The Permanent Council often issues declarations on peace. Their statements are also not laws, but rather moral statements. And then the role of the conference members in promoting peace. The conference has outstanding peace capabilities, not only because of its collegial nature, but also because of some of its members. Special mention should be made of the Pontifical Legate, who is actually not a member of the Conference of Bishops. However, he is invited to opening session of the conference and can help the work of the conference, particularly in security issues. Military ordinary, and the ordinary belongs to the other rights. Ordinaries of other rights can contribute significantly to the conference capabilities. Typically, they are not members of the conference, the Latin Conference, but they may be invited to attend meetings with consultative rights. With regard to persecuted Christian communities, conferences of bishops often fulfill their pastoral duty assigned by law. Finally, the ordinary responsible for the pastoral care of soldiers is worth highlighting. According to Apostolic Constitution Spirituali Militum Curiae, the military ordinary is a full member of the Conference of Bishops and enjoy the same rights as the other diocesan bishops. He may have specific knowledge of security issues and regional and cultural differences to assist the conference. It would also be ideal for him to participate in the peace commissions of the Conference of Bishops. Episcopal commissions for promotion of peace may have legally regulated, the Conference of Bishops may have legally regulated institutions and initiatives. From the 1960s, the Justitia et Pax commissions were established within the conferences. Their work for peace can take many forms, including prayers, vigils, liturgical and paraliturgical events. Their most significant activity is the preparation of the background materials for the conferences. And finally, I would like to mention the cooperation among the conferences of the bishops. The legislature encourages the cooperation between the neighboring conferences of bishops, says to promote and protect the greater good, which may be extended to environmental issues. As the legislature does not go into details, cooperation can vary widely. However, there are two typical forms of cooperation or collaboration. One form aims to heal historical grievances. The other is more institutionalized form. In terms of institutional cooperation, the Code of Canon Law mentions of alliance of neighboring conferences of bishops. Following the promulgation of the new code, the grouping of conferences of bishops covering major regions and continents become much more common. Council of Bishops Conference of Europe, Commission of the Bishop Conference of the European Union, Symposium of the Episcopal Conferences of Africa and Madagascar, Federation of Asian Bishop Conference, Latin America, and Caribbean Episcopal Council. These groups address social issues promoted by universal church and partly environmental problems affecting the regions. For the conclusion remarks, the Conference of Bishops is a prominent and permanent regional institution of the Catholic Church. It operates with hierarchical, collegial, and synodal elements. The predecessor institutions of the conference were established primarily to ward off attacks on the Church. The Second Vatican Council broke with defensive attitudes and focused on coordinating the realization of pastoral and social goals. However, whether we start from the traditional defensive approach of the Conference of Bishops or from the Council's ethics of dialogue, there is evidence that the conference can have an outstanding potential for promoting environmental questions. Thank you so much.